First Contact's price. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the research vessel Horizon, watching the unfamiliar stars of the Carina sector shimmer against the void. The ship's long-range sensors had picked up something unprecedented. A distress signal using mathematical sequences that couldn't possibly be human in origin. Signal analysis complete, Captain. Lieutenant Rivera announced from his station. It's definitely artificial, and definitely not one of ours. The patterns suggest a level of technology at least comparable to Earth's. Chen's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. Position. About 6 light hours out, originating from what appears to be a damaged vessel in orbit around HD 93,521 C. Time to intercept at maximum safe speed. Approximately 18 hours, Captain. Chen nodded, her decision already made. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. Alert all departments. Set course for the signal's origin, and get me a secure line to Earth Command. As the Horizon altered course, none of its crew could have known they were sailing into carefully laid trap. The distress signal had been crafted specifically to attract vessels like theirs. Research ships with minimal weapons, but advanced scientific equipment, and crews full of valuable specimens. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Scientists prepared first contact protocols, linguists worked on basic communication methods, and the ship's small security contingent ran through every scenario they could imagine. None of them came close to what actually awaited them. They found the source of the distress signal, a sleek vessel of clearly alien design, its hull bearing evidence of weapons damage. As they approached, they detected no life signs, but their sensors were having trouble penetrating certain areas of the ship's hull. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth research vessel Horizon. We are responding to your distress signal and are prepared to render assistance. The response came not in words but in action. The damaged sections of the alien ship suddenly came alive, revealing hidden weapon ports. Before the Horizon could raise shields, precision strikes disabled their engines and communications array. Multiple hostile contacts emerging from the planet's shadow. Rivera shouted, "We've been ambushed." 3 more alien vessels appeared, surrounding the Horizon in a perfect triangular formation. Their design was different from the disabled ship, suggesting cooperation between at least 2 species. "Get us out of here," Chen ordered, but it was too late. The Horizon's engines were dead, and a strange energy field was already enveloping the ship. A new voice filled their bridge, speaking perfect English. "Your vessel has been selected for acquisition. Resistance will only decrease your value. Prepare for boarding." Chen's blood ran cold. They weren't just making first contact. They were being hunted. The boarding happened with brutal efficiency. The aliens, tall humanoids with iridescent scales and reinforced combat suits, knew exactly how to disable Earth weapons and subdue human resistance. They moved through the ship with practiced ease, as if they'd done this many times before. Their leader, addressing Chen directly, confirmed her worst fears. "Your species has been under observation for some time, Captain. Your adaptability, intelligence, and physical resilience make you particularly valuable. The Council will be pleased." "The Council," Chen demanded, even as restraints were being placed on her wrists. "The governing body that regulates the distribution of suitable species throughout the galaxy. Your people will serve well in various capacities. Some as workers, others as test subjects for biological compatibility studies. The particularly gifted ones." The alien's multifaceted eyes studied her appraisingly. They often find themselves in more specialized roles. As Chen watched her crew being systematically cataloged and contained, a terrible understanding dawned. Humanity hadn't just made first contact. They'd discovered they were seen as nothing more than valuable livestock by at least some of their galactic neighbors. But even as she was led away, Chen's mind was already working. She noted every detail of their captors' movements, their technology, their hierarchical structure. If humanity was going to survive this, they'd needed information, and she intended to gather as much as she could. "You should be honored," her captor said, misinterpreting her intense observation. "Not every species is worthy of harvesting. Yours has shown remarkable potential." Chen said nothing, but her silence wasn't submission, it was calculation. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and their own destructive tendencies. They would survive this too. And when they did, these aliens would learn why humans had always excelled at turning adversity into advantage. The Horizon's capture marked humanity's true entry into the galactic community, not as equals, but as commodities. But chains had been broken before, and humanity had a long history of refusing to accept the roles others tried to force upon them. As Chen was led into the alien vessel, she caught one last glimpse of Earth's flag on the Horizon's hull. It wouldn't be the last time she saw it. She would make sure of that. The Underground Network. 6 months after the Horizon's capture, the galaxy had become a very different place for humanity. The disappearance of their research vessel hadn't gone unnoticed, and it wasn't the only one. As reports of missing ships and outpost raids accumulated, Earth's governments had quietly begun preparing for a war they hadn't known was coming. Dr. Marcus Wong sat in a hidden facility beneath the lunar surface, analyzing data from recovered alien technology. The former xenobiologist had become something else entirely since his sister's disappearance aboard a colonial transport. Part scientist, part resistance fighter, and full-time conspiracy theorist. Except his conspiracies had turned out to be true. "We've decoded another transmission," his colleague, Dr. Amara Okafor, announced. "She'd been working on breaking the aliens' encryption for months. You're going to want to see this." The decoded message revealed coordinates and transport schedules, sleigh shipments, they'd learned to call them. But this time, something was different. The message contained a hidden subset of data, coded differently from the main transmission. "This isn't their normal pattern," Amara said, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "It's almost like someone wanted us to find this." The hidden message was brief but clear. "Not all support the Council. Help exists. Respond on this frequency with your species designation if you seek alliance." Marcus stared at the message, remembering his sister's face. It could be another trap. "Everything's a trap these days," Amara replied. "The question is whether it's worth the risk." Before they could decide, an alert flashed on their screens. A new vessel had appeared in lunar orbit, one that hadn't come from Earth, but instead of attacking, it was broadcasting on the exact frequency mentioned in the message. The voice that came through their speakers belonged to a being that introduced itself as Kexley, a member of the Ratori species. "We've been watching your resistance efforts. Impressive for a species so new to space. But you're not alone in opposing the Council's slavery mandate." Marcus and Amara exchanged glances. This could change everything, or end in disaster. "Why should we trust you?" Marcus demanded. "Because I can tell you exactly where they've taken your people, including the crew of the vessel you call Horizon. And more importantly, I can help you get them back." Over the next few hours, Kexley revealed a truth that was both horrifying and hopeful. The galactic community was divided. While the Council and its corporate allies profited from the slave trade, a growing number of species had begun working in secret to dismantle it. "Your people have caused quite a stir," Kexley explained. "Most species break under captivity. Humans adapt, resist. Some even escape. It's making the Council nervous." "Good," Amara said firmly. Kexley's ship contained proof of their claims, detailed maps of detention facilities, security protocols, and most importantly, evidence of other resistance movements throughout the galaxy. They weren't just fighting for humanity anymore. They were part of something much bigger. The lunar facility became a hub of activity as more allies emerged. They learned of the Ratori, a species that had broken free from Council control generations ago. The Nexi, master technologists who provided advanced weaponry to resistance fighters. The Voral, former enforcers who'd turned against their masters after witnessing one too many atrocities. But the most valuable allies were the ones still within the system. Slaves and workers who passed information, sabotaged operations, and prepared for the day of reckoning. They called themselves the Underground, and humanity was about to become its newest and most motivated member. Marcus found himself working with alien biochemists, learning how their species had been modified for compliance and how those modifications could be reversed. Amara collaborated with resistance hackers, combining Earth's cyber warfare techniques with alien technology to create something entirely new. The hidden facility expanded, becoming one of many secret bases throughout the solar system. Earth's governments maintained public ignorance of alien contact while quietly channeling resources to the resistance. They couldn't match the Council's ships in direct combat, but humans had millennia of experience in asymmetric warfare. They expect us to be primitive, Marcus said during one strategy session. Let's show them how primitive humans can be when we're fighting for our people. The resistance grew stronger each day, but so did the danger. The Council wasn't blind to the underground network forming beneath their notice. More ships disappeared, more raids were conducted, and security at detention facilities increased. But they had something the Council didn't expect: hope, not just for themselves, but for every species that had suffered under the Council's regime. Humanity hadn't just joined the resistance, they were helping to transform it. "Your species has a saying," Kexley told them one day. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." We're building more than a resistance here. We're creating a new future for all our peoples. As Marcus studied the latest intelligence reports, he thought about his sister and the thousands of other humans in captivity. "Hold on," he whispered. "We're coming for you all." The underground network was more than just a resistance movement. It was becoming a revolution, and humanity was helping to light the fuse. The Council had made a crucial mistake in targeting Earth. They'd given humans a reason to fight, and humans had always excelled at fighting against impossible odds. Breaking chains. The detention facility on Proxima b wasn't supposed to exist. According to official Council records, the planet was an uninhabited mining outpost. But Sarah Chen knew better. She'd spent the last 8 months imprisoned there, watching as more humans were brought in and processed for distribution throughout Council space. She'd also spent those months planning. The guards had learned quickly that humans were different from their usual captives. They were adaptable, resourceful, and absolutely refused to accept their situation as permanent. What the guards hadn't learned was just how deep that adaptability went. "Status report," Sarah whispered into the makeshift communicator hidden in her food tray. The device, crafted from scavenged parts during maintenance duty, wouldn't have worked without the modifications provided by their newest arrival. A Nexi technician who'd allowed himself to be captured to make contact. "Earth fleet in position," came the reply, masked by the facility's background noise. "Underground forces ready, awaiting your signal." Sarah smiled. The Council was about to learn why humans had so many stories about prison breaks. The first sign that something was wrong came when the facility's power grid fluctuated. The guards checked their systems, found nothing amiss, and relaxed. They didn't realize that humans had centuries of experience in hiding things in plain sight. The second sign was more obvious: a massive explosion at the facility's main power core. As alarms blared and guards rushed to respond, Sarah gave the signal. Throughout the facility, humans and alien allies moved in perfect coordination, the result of months of careful planning. In the control room, the facility's commanders were shocked to discover their backup systems had been subtly reprogrammed. Instead of emergency protocols, their screens displayed a simple message: "From Earth with love." The space above Proxima b erupted in chaos as the Earth fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The ships weren't the largest or most advanced in the galaxy, but they carried generations of human military innovation. Council vessels found their shields failing against weapons they'd never encountered. Adaptations of their own technology combined with humanity's talent for thinking outside conventional boundaries. Multiple breaches reported. A guard shouted as explosion after explosion rocked the facility. "The slaves are armed." Impossible. The facility commander growled. "They're all tagged with control implants." "About those," Sarah said, stepping into the control room with a captured weapon. "Turns out humans are really good at reverse engineering, especially when we're motivated." The liberation of Proxima B became a blueprint for what followed. The underground network, powered by human ingenuity and alien technology, launched coordinated strikes across Council space. Each successful raid freed more captives and provided more resources for the next operation. Marcus Wong, monitoring the operations from Lunar Command, watched as decades of Council control began to crumble. "They never understood," he told Kexley. "Humans don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to win." The Council's response was predictably brutal, but they were fighting an enemy they couldn't fully comprehend. Humans had turned their own arrogance against them, using their belief in their superiority to hide preparations in plain sight. Sarah led a team through the facility's lower levels, freeing captives of various species. Many joined the fight immediately, turning their years of suppressed rage into action. The Council had created an army against themselves, and humanity had given it teeth. "They're calling for reinforcements," Amara reported from her position in Earth's Cyber Command. "But somehow all their messages are being rerouted to dead zones." Her smile was fierce. "Funny how that happens." The battle for Proxima B lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the facility had been completely secured, its prisoners freed, and its databases stripped of valuable intelligence. More importantly, it proved what the underground had suspected. The Council's control wasn't as absolute as they pretended. "We've identified 12 more facilities of this type," Marcus announced during the post-operation briefing. "And thanks to the data we recovered, we now have their security protocols." Sarah, finally reunited with her crew, stood before the assembled resistance leaders. "The Council thought they could break us. Instead, we've shown them something they never expected: unity. Every species they've enslaved, every world they've exploited, is now a potential ally." The consequences rippled through Council space. Other species, inspired by humanity's success, began their own resistance movements. The underground network grew exponentially, transforming from a hidden resistance into an unstoppable force for change. But the Council still held tremendous power, and their retaliation would be severe. They couldn't allow this challenge to their authority to succeed, or their entire system of control would collapse. "Let them come," Sarah said when warned of the gathering storm. "Humanity has never backed down from a fight when it mattered, and it matters now more than ever." The liberation of Proxima B marked a turning point in the war. The Council had wanted to exploit humanity's strength. Instead, they'd given humans a cause worth fighting for, allies worth dying for, and a future worth building. They were about to learn why every human story of oppression eventually becomes a story of revolution. The Council's shadow. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds shouted over each other as reports of the Proxima B liberation filtered through secure channels. Above them all, the High Councilors watched in growing concern. "How did primitives manage this?" demanded High Councilor Vexna, her crystalline form pulsing with angry red light. "They weren't even supposed to know we existed." Ambassador Julia Santos listened to the uproar from her position in the diplomatic gallery. Getting humanity a seat at this session had cost Earth considerable resources and several clever manipulations of Council law. But it was worth it. The Council needed to see the face of the species they tried to enslave. "Perhaps," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with practiced diplomatic precision, "you should have investigated humanity more thoroughly before deciding we were suitable for exploitation." The chamber fell silent. It was unprecedented for a primitive species to address the Council so directly. But humanity had gotten very good at doing the unprecedented. "You dare." Vexna began, but Julia cut her off. "We dare because you left us no choice. But we're not here for revenge. We're here to negotiate." The documents Julia presented to the Council told a devastating story. Evidence of corruption at the highest levels. proof that several high counselors had personal investments in the slave trade, records of illegal genetic experiments performed on captive populations. These records were secured during the Proxima B operation. Julia explained, "We have more, much more. The question is, what are you prepared to do about it?" The Council's response revealed deep fractures in their supposed unity. Species that had quietly opposed the slave trade now saw an opportunity to speak out. Others, fearful of human military capabilities demonstrated at Proxima B, began distancing themselves from the trade's supporters. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Council space, the revolution continued. Sarah Chen and her forces struck target after target, each liberation adding to their strength. But now they had a new objective: gathering evidence to support humanity's diplomatic offensive. The Council isn't just corrupt, Marcus reported during a secure briefing. It's built on corruption. The slave trade isn't a side business. It's the foundation of their economy. Amara, who'd been diving deep into recovered Council databases, made an even more startling discovery. "Look at this," she said, highlighting ancient legal texts. "The original Council Charter explicitly forbids the exploitation of sentient species. Everything they've done is illegal by their own founding laws." The revelation sparked a legal and political firestorm. Species that had been Council members for generations began questioning everything they'd been told. The underground network transformed again, from a pure resistance movement into something more complex, a force for fundamental change in galactic society. But the Council's corrupt core wouldn't go down without a fight. Assassination attempts targeted human diplomats. Mercenary fleets attacked liberation operations. Propaganda portrayed humans as violent terrorists threatening galactic stability. "They're partially right," Sarah told her crews after a particularly difficult mission. "We are threatening their stability. Because their stability is built on suffering, and that's something humans have never learned to ignore." The turning point came from an unexpected source. A group of young counselors, led by representatives from worlds that had themselves escaped slavery generations ago, began openly supporting human calls for reform. They called themselves the New Council, and their support gave the human resistance legitimate political power. Julia used this support masterfully, combining diplomatic pressure with the threat of further military action. "Every facility we liberate provides more evidence of your crimes," she told the High Council. "How much more do you think your people will accept before they demand answers?" The Council's authority, absolute for so long, began to crack. Species that had been neutral started choosing sides. Trade routes were disrupted. Planetary governments began refusing to cooperate with Council enforcement teams. "They thought they could keep control through fear," Marcus observed during a strategy session. "They never understood that fear has a tipping point. Push people too far, and fear turns into fury." But even as the Council's power waned, the danger grew. Desperate to maintain control, hardline Council factions authorized increasingly extreme measures. Secret weapons were activated. Sleeper agents were deployed. The galaxy teetered on the edge of full-scale war. "This was never just about freeing our people," Julia told an emergency session of Earth's United Governments. "It's about freeing every species from a system that treats sentient beings as commodities, and humanity, for all our faults, has always excelled at fighting for freedom." The stage was set for a final confrontation. The Council's facade of benevolent authority had cracked, revealing the rot beneath. But bringing down a system that had dominated the galaxy for centuries wouldn't be easy, and the hardliners wouldn't surrender their power without an apocalyptic fight. Humanity had started this revolution, and now they had to finish it. The question was no longer whether the Council would fall, but what would replace it, and whether the galaxy would survive the transition. Liberation's dawn. The galactic core glowed through the view screen of the Earth ship, defiant as Sarah Chen addressed the combined fleet. Ships of every species that had joined the revolution gathered in numbers never before seen in Council space. The Council's hardliners had retreated to their last stronghold, a massive space station that had served as the center of their slave trade operations for centuries. They thought they could break us. Sarah's voice carried across the fleet's combined communications. Instead, we broke their system. We showed the galaxy that change isn't just possible. It's inevitable when enough people stand together against tyranny. In the diplomatic quarter of the station, Julia Santos made her final offer to the new council representatives. Surrender the hardliners, acknowledge the rights of all sentient species, and help us build something better, or watch everything you've built burn. The response came in the form of weapons fire. Hidden defense platforms around the station activated, targeting the Liberation fleet. But humanity had learned from every previous engagement, and their allies had learned with them. Predictable, Marcus commented from his position in Fleet Tactical. They never could imagine anyone fighting differently than they would. He activated the signal that human engineers had spent months preparing. Throughout the station, seemingly dormant maintenance robots, based on designs stolen from council archives and modified with human ingenuity, suddenly activated. Emergency systems that had been subtly reprogrammed during routine maintenance began executing new protocols. The station's formidable defenses turned against themselves. The thing about humans, Amara broadcast across all frequencies, knowing the hardliners would be listening, is that we've had thousands of years to perfect the art of revolution. We learned long ago that the biggest weapons aren't always the most important. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The Council's forces had superior technology and centuries of military tradition. The Liberation Fleet had humanity's talent for unconventional warfare and the desperate courage of those fighting for freedom. Inside the station, Sarah led a strike team through maintenance tunnels that Council architects had never imagined could be used for invasion. They encountered heavy resistance, but each defender they faced had to wonder if their own automated systems would suddenly turn against them. Security protocols failing, a Council commander shouted. The slaves are accessing restricted levels. Former slaves, Sarah corrected, as her team breached another barrier. And we're not just accessing them, we're taking them. In space, the battle reached its climax. Council ships found their sophisticated targeting systems corrupted by virus-like programs that evolved faster than their security could adapt. Communication channels filled with phantom signals that seemed to anticipate and counter every strategy. They're using our own systems against us, a Council admiral realized too late. Everything we built to control others has become the tool of their liberation. Marcus finished, watching as another defense platform turned its weapons on Council ships. The station's central control room fell not to military might, but to the combined efforts of every species the Council had tried to subjugate. Human hackers worked alongside Nexi technicians to disable security systems. Former slaves who'd memorized the station's layout during years of servitude guided strike teams through hidden approaches. High Counselor Vexna, her crystalline form now darkened with fury, faced Julia Santos across the command center's main hall. "You've doomed us all," she spat. "Without the Council's authority, the galaxy will collapse into chaos." "No," Julia replied calmly. "We're building something new, something better. The galaxy doesn't need masters and slaves. It needs equals working together." She gestured to the representatives of dozens of species who had joined the human delegation. "Look around you. What you feared has already happened, and it's beautiful." The liberation of the Council's central station marked more than just a military victory. It represented a fundamental shift in galactic society. The documents recovered from the station's databases provided irrefutable evidence of centuries of corruption and abuse, ensuring that the old system could never return. In the days that followed, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to begin building a new governing structure, humanity's role evolved. They were no longer just freedom fighters. They became bridges between species, teachers of revolution and renewal, guardians against the rise of new tyrannies. "We didn't just break chains," Sarah told her crew as they watched the sun rise over Earth for the first time in almost a year. "We proved that no matter how long oppression lasts, hope survives. And where there's hope, humans will always find a way to turn it into change." The galaxy entered a new era, one shaped by the very qualities the Council had tried to exploit in humanity. Adaptability became a tool for cooperation rather than control. Resilience fueled exploration instead of exploitation. The human spirit of resistance transformed into a spirit of innovation and growth. And in the end, the Council's greatest fear came true, but not as they had imagined. Humanity did change the galaxy, not by conquering it, but by showing that every species, no matter how long enslaved, had the power to rewrite their own destiny. The stars looked different now, filled not with threats to be controlled, but with possibilities to be explored. Humanity had earned its place among them, not through submission, but through revolution, not through power, but through partnership. And in shiplogs and history books across the galaxy, the story would be told of how humanity's first contact with galactic civilization began with chains, but ended with a dawn of freedom that would light the way forward for generations to come.